Everybody wants to get Big Ange out of Tottenham. Even Big Ange looks like he wants to get the hell out of Tottenham. But once he's done, who's going to want that spot? Who are you going to be picking from? Be careful what you wish for, Spurs fans. I'm not sure you're going to get the managers you think you're going to get. We're going to talk about that next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Whenever there are calls to fire a manager or bench a player or make any sort of significant change, the biggest thing fans overlook is who are the better options. When somebody leaves, somebody has to replace them. That's just how the world works, and a lot of times the options really aren't any better, and that may be the case that Spurs fans are running into, and frankly, it's their own damn fault, or it's at least partly their fault. Daniel Levy always gets part of the blame because he's incompetent at running the club, but the fans, you guys are not making it any better, and I think the general disgust being shown by Ange Postecoglou as this season winds down is evident of that, and I think it's really going to hurt your ability to recruit a top-end manager, and we just went through this when you got Big Ange, so the whole thing is repeating itself. It's a mess. We're going to talk about it in a second, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get down in the comments section. If you want Ange out, who do you want in? Be realistic. I don't know if you're going to get the guys you want, but get in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave some comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So if Ange is out, who's in? That's the question. And it's not just, oh, you got rid of this guy or you're getting rid of this guy. And, you know, by the way, he still works there, right? And he could win the Europa League. And does that save him? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We could see a situation where he wins the Europa League, somehow gets Tottenham to miraculously qualify for the Champions League next year, and then still gets sacked because this is a club run by Daniel Levy who fired Jose Mourinho right before a cup final, right? This sort of thing has been done. It's wild what goes on at Tottenham, and obviously Daniel Levy is a large part of the problem. He is not a competent director, he is not a competent leader, and clearly he has not run the club well. Now, changes have been made in terms of technical directors and who's in charge of player management. It's not just Daniel Levy. In fact, that's not even really his role, but he's there and he's not good. And that has been a common theme and a common problem. And there's no big club that has a shorter leash for their managers. I mean, look at the rundown of previous managers. In the last 13 years, the only guy to make it to 100 games was Mauricio Pochettino, who took you to a Champions League final and then was run out not that long after because he didn't, repeat that miraculous feat. And now everybody wants him back. Don't talk to American fans. They'll probably be happy to give him back to you at this point. But everybody wants him back after getting tired of him and having no patience and running his ass out of town in the first place. And that's the problem. Nobody else has even made it to 100 games. Ange is going to be real close the way this is coming down to the wire. But the general consensus is that he will not be there next year, no matter what happens. And frankly, from the sounds of it, he doesn't even want to be there. He's so miserable at this point, and he has been very open in talking about the response from the fan base and the hatred and the fact that even when things go right, they're bad now. And frankly, that seems to be the closest thing Spurs have to an identity, is that even when things are good, they suck. And man, what a miserable way to live your life. I'm sorry, but that's terrible. And it feeds off of itself. You had a gregarious, sort of boisterous manager when he got there, and he has now been beaten down to the point where he just hates everything. And he's mocking the fans when things go right. I mean, it's ugly, and I don't blame Ange. Listen, he's not perfect. I'm not defending him. I'm not saying he should still be there. He has not adjusted his style well, and he does leave the team exposed. They've also had massive injuries, which he may or may not have played a little bit of a role in, and they're young, and part of the problem here is the expectations. I love what Tottenham have done from a player acquisition standpoint in terms of building the young core of players. I did a whole video about that at the start of this season, and I stand by it, but the expectations should have been different, and I'm not sure why they paid all that money for Dom Solanke for a club that wasn't ready to compete, really, because they were so young. But all that being what it is, you've now created a situation where the fan base just hates everything, and if I'm a coach, is that really the spot I want to be coming into? So who are the realistic options? That's what I want to talk about today. And are they going to want to get in this mess? You know, some of the leading candidates are Marco Silva at Fulham, Iriola at Bournemouth, Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace. I've seen Thiago Motta mentioned. He's not with Juventus anymore. And, you know, these are all good managers who have established themselves, coached at relatively high levels. But these are managers who don't have the big name. They're not Xabi Alonso. They weren't, you know, they didn't have these, you know, magnificent playing careers that they can lean back on. So the burden of proof for these guys has been harder, and they take a slower path to, you know, up the coaching ranks than guys like Alonso. And so, you know, is it really the best move for them? And that's what I'm afraid of for Spurs fans, is these guys aren't going to want any part of the mess that you have created in conjunction with your ownership because of the ridiculous expectations that come with managing your club. Nobody gets through a second year if you're not Mauricio Pochettino. None of your last dozen managers have gotten through a year, through the second year. It's insane. And so if you are one of these managers and you desperately want a Big Six job, but you know you're only going to get one shot at it, is this really the shot you want to take? Look at a guy like Graham Potter. He went to Brighton, had success, jumped to Chelsea. Immediate failure, you know, cast off, and now he's back at West Ham. Chelsea has a similar problem here to Tottenham, where the expectations are unrealistic, and we have to have immediate success or it doesn't work. And, you know, it's not like West Ham is some terrible place to be, but it's not a Big Six club. He's going to have to work his way up if he wants another opportunity. And that is very much a danger for anybody considering this job. Any of these guys like Silva or Glasner, you know, at Crystal Palace, at Fulham, who are having success and want to jump, is this the best fit for them? And I would argue it's not. If I'm Oliver Glasner, I would be very hesitant to take this job. And there were some reports out there that he's excited to work with Daniel Levy. No way do I buy that whatsoever. Oliver Glasner is a smarter man than that. Nobody's excited to work with Daniel Levy. If they take this job, it's because it's the only big, quote, big job they can get their hands on that they're being offered. And we just saw this. We just saw it with Ange a couple years ago. He was a consolation prize. He was not the guy everybody wanted. They wanted Arne Slot, right? That's who they were making an offer to. That's who they desperately wanted. They were connected with other big managers who didn't want any part of it. They would love Xabi Alonso, but he'd probably rather stay at Leverkusen than come take that job. I know I would. He at least would get other opportunities, but some of these other guys, you know, would end up back at a lower tier, you know, club in the Premier League or back in Germany in a case like Glasner's if it doesn't go well at Tottenham. And history will tell you it's probably not going to go well, because the minute you lose a couple games, the fans turn on you, and it's just a slow death to that point. And that's what we're witnessing with Ange right now. So I don't think it's as appealing of a job as the fans want to believe it is. It should be. You're a big club, beautiful new stadium, plenty of funding. It should be a great job, but it's simply not. And the fans are as much to blame on that as Daniel Levy, because they control the narrative. They put the pressure on the club. Everything becomes miserable, even the success. Ange has even said that this season. And it really just, no one stands a chance. And look at the managers who have had success everywhere else other than Tottenham. Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Nuno Espirito Santo, who had a terrible stint at Tottenham, but only got 17 games, and then has rebuilt Nottingham Forest in his vision, and they're, you know, 10 spots above Tottenham right now. So, you know, the lack of patience makes it a very unappealing job. So I just don't think it's going to be the draw that fans think it's going to be. So then, of course, if you want Ange out, and I'm not going to get into that debate, but let's assume Ange is going to go one way or another, who do you want for next year? Who's actually realistic? And if you don't think the names that are being linked are going to take it, and let's be realistic, somebody will probably take it because it's going to be the only Big Six job available most likely this summer, and managers are desperate for one of those jobs, so somebody will probably cave and take it, but I don't think it's probably the best move for their career, and I don't know if it's the best move for Tottenham, because the best option may be the one that's in the house already. And I made this argument a couple years ago when they were doing their search, and they ended up with Ange Postecoglou, and right before he got hired, I suggested that it was time for Ryan Mason to get an opportunity. Ryan Mason is a Spur through and through. He's been the caretaker manager a couple times. He has survived multiple coaches, Nuno Espirito Santo, Antonio Conte, Ange. They all keep him around. That is a huge accolade, because coaches tend to clear house and bring in their own staff, and yet he has gotten a chance to maintain because of his Spurs connection. He played for the club, and he's been there a long time, and he has openly said he wants the job, and at this point, he probably deserves an opportunity to do it. Can't do any worse than any of the previous managers other than Pochettino. Nobody's had any success, so what do you have to lose? And that's the, he's the closest thing to an identity and a culture that Spurs have, other than the culture of just hating life and being miserable and being a failure all the time. So, he's the best bet to try and turn this around, and the opportunity is there for him and for Spurs to do the right thing and stop chasing these big names and stop chasing what could be and go with the known entity who desperately loves the club and desperately wants to be there. So, if you're going to go Ange out, I would strongly argue that it is Ryan Mason's turn. If Ange got fired tomorrow, Mason would probably get his third caretaker stint. It's time to let him run this club the way he desperately wants to and frankly knows how to do. So what do you think? Ryan Mason, a bigger name? Who's actually going to show up and want to run this club? Get down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.